2.5 Men begins with Judith Harper throwing Alan out of his own house.
My wife threw me out, and I'm kind of losing the will to live. So when you get a chance, I'd really love to...
And she doesn't just end the marriage, she gives him a reason he can't argue with. Judith tells Alan she's gay.
I'm gonna look back on this as a new beginning for our marriage, a rebirth, a renaissance, if you will.
Alan, I think I'm gay.
It's the kind of explanation that closes a door completely. There's no version of "let's work on this" that survives it. Later, Alan and Charlie run into Judith at the movies, and she's not with a woman. She's with Phil, Jake's soccer coach.
To Mississippi? Oh, God. Okay, we're all...
The excuse that ended a 12-year marriage lasts less than a season before the show quietly confirms, in front of Alan's own eyes, that it was never true. The series opens on that image, and Judith becomes the villain of the pilot. For years afterward, that first impression never really changes. But a first impression isn't a verdict. The real question is whether the show spends 12 seasons proving that instinct right, or just keeps assuming the audience already agrees. That's what this video is for, because the assumption never really goes away. Past the pilot, Judith becomes one of the show's most consistently disliked characters, and the writing rarely challenges that reputation. Part of it is what she does, while another is simply how she shows up in a scene, rarely satisfied, rarely warm, treating most conversations with Alan like a complaint.
Andy, maybe you'd like to go put some clothes on.
Why?
Yeah, she ain't hurting anybody.
She doesn't get the redemption arcs Charlie gets, or the sympathy Alan gets even at his worst. The show is comfortable letting the audience hate her season after season, and it rarely has to work very hard to keep that dislike going. The clearest place to start is what the divorce actually costs Alan, because it doesn't stop once the marriage ends. Every paycheck already has a piece missing, and that's alimony. It's why, when Charlie mentions that her new relationship could end his alimony, Alan starts paying attention to her love life.
What if she marries him?
Even better.
Better? How is it better? Show me the better.
If she marries him, you're off the hook for alimony.
That attention becomes almost desperate by the time she announces her engagement to Herb. His response isn't warmth for her. It's the joy of someone who thinks he's finally being let out of something. He dances in his living room because he thinks the bill is about to stop. The show frames his final alimony payment almost ceremonially, Alan handing over a check with the number written across it. Judith isn't wrong to expect support in the aftermath. It is what happens once that support isn't necessary. Judith marries a doctor, her financial need disappears, and the requests to Alan don't stop. They just get relabeled. Always about Jake, never about her, even when Herb could cover the cost himself. That relabeling gets absurd years later, when Alan starts an investment scheme and Judith hands over money to put into it, including a portion of Jake's child support. When Alan objects, pointing out the money isn't supposed to be discretionary, Judith doesn't pause. She tells him not to be naive.
I don't want to cash out.
Whatever do you mean?
Reinvest this and add in the next 6 months of your child support.
Hold on now. That money's supposed to be for Jake.
Oh, don't be so naive.
There's no acknowledgement the objection might be fair. Just the assumption that access to Alan's money was never really about need. It was about entitlement. Money is one kind of leverage. Jake is a more dangerous one. There's a difference between a parent setting boundaries and a parent using access as currency. In Just Like Buffalo, Jake repeats something Charlie said back to Judith, an offhand comment.
If you've got someone to clean your house and do your shopping, and you're getting some action on a regular basis, the only reason you need a wife is if you have some sick compulsion to give away half your stuff.
So you're never gonna get married?
No, as long as I got someone to clean my house and some action on a regular basis, I don't need a wife.
Judith's response isn't a conversation with Alan. She simply stops sending Jake for his weekend visits. No negotiation, no explanation. The custody arrangement becomes something she can pause whenever Alan's household displeases her, and the mechanism is his son. The pattern surfaces again. Judith accuses Alan of bad-mouthing her to Jake, building her case entirely on the fact that Jake's attitude toward her has gotten worse.
Alan, have you been bad-mouthing me?
Bad-mouthing you? To whom?
To Jake.
Oh, to Jake, no.
She doesn't ask Jake what's going on. She treats his mood as evidence and Alan as the defendant. Years later, the imbalance shows up in reverse. In It's Always Nazi Week, Judith and Herb hit a rough patch, and rather than working through logistics with Alan as a co-parent, she simply hands Jake over for 3 straight months. Not because it's better for Jake, because it's convenient for her.
Actually, I was thinking more like a solid 3 months.
In a row?
Alan, how many sons do you have?
As many as you do.
The same son who was leveraged to withhold in one episode becomes a burden to offload in another. The constant is that Judith decides and Alan absorbs it. What connects both isn't really parenting philosophy. It's where the power sits. Alan wants his son in his life badly enough that Judith rarely has to raise her voice to get what she wants. She only has to mention less time with Jake and the conversation is already over. The same power shows up quieter, dressed up as affection instead of authority. Before Judith remarries, Alan goes to her house to help with chores, still believing there's a version of the marriage worth saving. Charlie tells him plainly that he's being used. Alan denies it because he isn't ready to hear it.
Being the good boy, fixing everything so everybody would love you. It didn't work with Mom. It didn't work with either of the women you went out with.
The dynamic doesn't disappear once the divorce is final. It just gets quieter. There's a recurring beat where Judith pulls Alan back in with a kiss, a moment of vulnerability, a night that ends with him staying later than he meant to, only for her to later admit the affection wasn't really about him. In one instance, she tells him she kissed him because she was afraid he'd leave, not because she wanted him to stay.
Alan, I kissed you out of fear.
Hey, it still counts.
Alan, you were right. We have to move on.
The warmth was never the point. Keeping her options open was. The same instinct resurfaces most clearly during her marriage to Herb, when things go bad enough that Herb briefly moves out.
She bought that king of the castle crap?
No, she kicked my ass out.
Judith goes looking for comfort, and Alan is the one she finds it with. What follows isn't framed as two adults reconnecting. It's Judith telling him after they sleep together that she'll never let him go while still married to someone else.
You're a good man, and I'm never gonna let you go again.
Never?
It isn't a declaration of feeling. It's a claim of ownership made at the exact moment it's most convenient for her. None of this requires Judith to raise her voice or issue an ultimatum, which is what makes it control rather than conflict. She doesn't need to demand anything directly because she already knows what he wants from her and exactly how much of it to offer to keep him circling back. Some of what Judith does isn't about money or custody or control though. It's smaller and more personal. Moments where the point seems to be making sure Alan feels small in front of people who matter to him. There's an episode where Charlie is hosting a gathering and Alan isn't invited. That barely registers next to what follows. Judith throws her own party the same week, and Alan isn't invited either, even though her guest list is full of people who are technically his friends too.
Sandra and Howard are my friends too. In fact, I introduced them to you.
Well, why don't you call them sometime and invite them to your house?
This is my house.
The dynamic gets more direct after an earthquake displaces Judith into Charlie's house. Alan, still not fully past the divorce, reacts badly when she goes out on a date.
I told you I had a date. You said you were fine with it.
In theory, I was.
And the confrontation ends with Judith throwing him out of a house that isn't even hers.
And because I have changed. Tonight, I'm leaving you.
But underneath the joke is something consistent with everything before it. A man handing over something real, and a woman treating it as barely worth her attention. If the case against Judith stopped at Alan, it would be easy to file her away as cruel to one specific man for one specific reason. But cruelty that only shows up around a single person usually means something more complicated is going on. It's worth looking at how Judith treats the other man she married. Herb marries Judith believing he loves her, and is treated coldly, dismissively, echoing almost exactly how she handled Alan.
Hey, if I'm gonna sleep in the guest room, I get to use the guest towels!
Their marriage fractures badly enough that Herb gets thrown out of his own house over a disagreement that traces back to him taking Charlie's advice.
As soon as she starts complaining, you put your foot down. Let her know who's in charge. And no matter what, do not let her use sex as a weapon. You let her know that if she won't satisfy your needs, there's plenty of women out there who will.
Well, it worked out great.
Really? She bought that king of the castle crap?
No, she kicked my ass out.
Same shape as the pattern with Alan. A man loses his home over something Judith decided unilaterally, dressed up as a consequence of his own bad judgment. What happens next removes any doubt. While Herb is out of the house, Judith doesn't sit with the separation. She goes to Alan, she sleeps with him, and afterward tells him she'll never let him go, while still legally married to the man she just had thrown out. It's Judith doing to a second marriage exactly what she did inside the first one, keeping a man on a string the moment it's convenient, regardless of who else is holding the other end. Years later, Herb is the one who cheats with his receptionist, and Judith divorces him for it.
She left me, Al.
Oh my God, what happened?
Yeah, I had a moment of weakness with my receptionist. Actually, 36 and a half moments of weakness.
On its face, that looks like Judith finally on the receiving end of betrayal instead of causing it. But the earlier affair with Alan complicates even that. Herb never learns about it. He spends the marriage assuming the infidelity started with him. He walks away certain he was the one who broke it, never getting the chance to weigh what she did against what he did because he never finds out. None of this makes Judith the show's only flawed character. Alan spends 12 seasons being needy, dishonest, and occasionally worse than she is. Charlie built an entire identity around treating women as disposable. The show never pretends its cast is made up of good people. What sets Judith apart isn't that she's the worst person in the Harper family. It's that the show rarely asks the audience to look at her the way it asks the audience to look at everyone else. Alan gets explained. Charlie gets explained endlessly, but Judith mostly just gets reacted to as a source of trouble the other characters have to manage. Rarely a person the show slows down to understand. That's not really a flaw in the writing. It's a choice, and choices like that shape how an audience ends up feeling about a character years after the show stops airing.